Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming to you from right here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea. It's an honor and a privilege, as it is every day, to have you guys joining me here. Got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about today. Solo, unfortunately, continues to massively struggle at the box office. We got news here that Silver and Black has been pulled off the Sony schedule. Whole bunch of other things as well. But before we get to any of that stuff, let's go right off the top with this. Now, as many of you know, there's a new movie coming out with Jon Hamm, Jeremy Renner, and Jake Johnson called Tag. At first, it looked a little weird, and then you see the trailers, and you know it's based on a true story about this group of men who've been playing the same game of tag for like 30 years. Anyway, I'm really excited to see it. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go see the movie tonight. Anyway, we heard there were rumors last year that Jeremy Renner had been injured on the set of Avengers Infinity War. Well, we know that's not true because he wasn't even in Avengers Infinity War. We later found out he got injured on the set of Tag. And what we've now found out is that Jon Hamm was doing an interview and he discussed how Jeremy Renner actually broke both of his arms. This is what Jon Hamm had to say. He said Jeremy Renner broke both of his arms on the same day, day 3 of production. We had 40 more days to go. Keep in mind, this is a man who's done 100 Avengers movies and been fine. And he does a movie about playing tag, both arms, like firewood, just snap like a matchstick. Now, what's really interesting here about this is that I've been reading, and I cannot confirm this, but what I've been reading was that since he injured himself on day 3, they didn't halt production, they kept going, but from what I understand, they made his casts, they painted his casts in green, in the green screen green, and they just did post-production. And I think there's some scenes in the movie where he has a cast on anyway, so maybe they worked it into the plot. I'm not really sure. But what is fascinating to me again about this story is that this thing going around that they may have just painted his cast green and continued on and just did some visual effects over his arms when they needed to. I'm sure they put some jackets over him at times or did whatever they had to do, but I think it's really cool that they just kept on with production and worked around the injury. So I think that's pretty funny. I think that's great. And I'm very excited to see Tag. I've been looking forward to this movie. I cannot wait to see it. It looks really fun. So we'll see how it turns out. I'll let you guys know as soon as I see it. All right, with that stuff out of the way, let's get on with today's movie news feed. First up, as many of you will remember, it was rumored months ago that the next installment of the Wonder Woman franchise would take place sometime in the 1980s with the Cold War as the backdrop, and that Chris Pine would return as Steve Trevor. Now we know that at least part of that rumor is true, as DC has released the following image saying simply WW84, obviously implying that the movie will take place in 1984. How much the year and the Cold War will actually play into the movie itself is yet unknown. What we do know is that actress Kristen Wiig will be playing the villain Cheetah in the film, and Narcos and Game of Thrones star Pedro Pascal will also appear in the film in a role we don't yet know about. The first Wonder Woman movie made $821 million at the box office, making it the second biggest DCU movie behind only Batman vs. Superman. This makes a lot of sense on several different levels. First of all, you've got a huge gap of time between present day and the events of the first Wonder Woman film, so why not take advantage of that? But here's the biggest reason to me that this is a smart move. One of the things that the first Wonder Woman movie had going for it was that it was isolated from the rest of the DCU. By putting it in the era that it did, it wasn't, weighed down with whatever perceived baggage there might be with the rest of the DCU. They didn't have to worry about Superman or Batman or Aquaman or any of that other stuff that was going on because none of that had come around yet. They could make a Wonder Woman movie that solely focused on Wonder Woman and didn't have to ask any questions about any other superheroes running around. By setting this movie in the era of the Cold War in the 1980s, they're taking advantage of that big advantage once again. Once again, they're going to be isolated from the rest of the DCU, and they can really just focus the entire movie on Wonder Woman herself. Now, as to the other part of those rumors that we heard a couple months ago that Chris Pine may return, I'm still open to that one way or the other. I mean, acting-wise, he was the strongest part of the first film. It'd be good to have him there as a solid presence as well, but bringing in another actor like Pascal, who's an incredible performer, he would hold up pretty strong as well. So look, I don't know whether Wonder Woman 2 is going to turn out to be as good as the first one or not, but all these things to me is pretty good sounding news. This should make anybody optimistic. Next up, The financial news for Solo: A Star Wars Story just seems to keep getting worse and worse. The film opened to an extremely disappointing $83 million at the opening weekend box office, far below industry projections. And now it has just come in at $29 million for its second weekend, equating to a 65% drop from week one. This, despite no new significant competition opening against it. The figure was good enough to take the number one spot at the box office again, but just barely over Deadpool 2, which caught up significantly with $23 million over the weekend. The hope that Solo could have enough legs to potentially break even seems to be a dead hope now. The only question left is, how much will this movie lose? Like I just said, the $29 million opening is only compounded by the fact that the only other things opening against it was Adrift, that only made $11 million. You had Upgrade, which only made about $4 million. And you had Action Point, which only made about $2 million. I.e., there was no significant competition opening this weekend. This should have been an easy ride to 50% drop or less for Solo, especially considering that's a pretty good movie. However, it took a 65% drop despite the fact that there was no stiff competition. Now look, had this movie had, say, Jurassic World opening on its second weekend, opening on Solo's second weekend, yeah, then you'd kind of expect a 60 to 65% drop. We all remember what happened with Spider-Man Homecoming when War for the Planet of the Apes opened on the very next week. It took a big significant drop, but it had legs and it went on to becoming one of the biggest films of the year. That's fine. But Solo doesn't have that excuse. There was nothing solid opening up against it, and instead, what we see is that a 1 week older film like Deadpool 2 is actually catching up to it and may actually pass it at next weekend's box office. So however you want to measure this thing, it's just bad news. And right now, with Solo after its second week only making around in the mid 200 millions, this film needs to get to $650 million just to break even. And we can just say wholeheartedly right now, it ain't going to get there. So once again, the only real question left for Solo is how big of a money loser it's going to be. It's not if it's going to lose money. Now the question is how much money is it going to lose? We'll have to wait and see for a few more weeks. Next up, it's being reported that 15-year-old actor Julian Dennison, who was a great surprise in Deadpool 2 as Russell, aka Fire Fist, has just signed on to appear in the upcoming giant monster showdown movie Godzilla vs. Kong for Universal. From coming soon, Adam Wingard, the filmmaker behind You're Next, The Guest, and The Blair Witch, will direct the film, marking just the second time that the two legendary movie monsters will appear together in one film. Godzilla vs. Kong is currently set to hit in theaters on May 22nd, 2020. I'll tell you what, I love this kid. Now, his first few minutes, I'm not going to go into any spoiler detail on Deadpool 2, but the first few minutes that Julian's in the movie, I thought he was overacting a little bit. I found him just a bit annoying, but as the movie progressed and I started to understand the character more, then all of a sudden, even the way he acted in those first few minutes on screen made a lot more sense to me. And by the end of the film, I was completely on board with this kid as Russell. I thought he was great. So hearing that he's going to pop up in a Godzilla vs. King Kong is also wonderful news. Now, are they getting ahead of themselves a little bit with Godzilla vs. Kong when Godzilla 2 hasn't even come out yet? And let's face it, while Godzilla and Kong both did okay at the box office, neither one of them blew the doors off. What happens to Kong vs. Godzilla or Godzilla vs. Kong, whichever way you want to look at it? What happens to that if Godzilla 2 comes out and tanks or loses money? Like, they might want to be a little bit careful here about how far ahead of themselves they get. But still, assuming that Godzilla 2 does at least okay, we can expect to see this thing in 2020, and adding Julian to it, I think is nothing but good news. And finally, in a surprise move, Sony Studios has pulled their upcoming Spider-Man spin-off film, Silver and Black, off their February 8th, 2019 release date. The film was set to release just 4 months after the upcoming Venom movie, which will star Tom Hardy. According to Variety, Sony is currently looking at new dates, but as of now, none have been selected. Footage of Venom played at the recent CinemaCon in Las Vegas to overwhelmingly positive responses. However, as we all know, just because clips play well doesn't mean the whole film will play well. Okay, now let me put on my conspiracy theory hat here for just a second. They pulled the Silver and Black date off and they say they're looking for a new date. I don't even think they're looking for a new date right now. Here's what I think happened, and again, this is just pure speculation on my part. These guys saw what happened just now with Solo. They saw what happened with the Monsters universe when they tried to launch with the Mummy and all that kind of stuff. I think they realized, you know what? Before we start sinking real money into this film, let's take a breath and see how Venom does at the box office with Tom Hardy. If Venom can come out, make 475 million worldwide, great. Then we proceed with Silver and Black and see what we can get put together. I mean, heavens, like Venom makes $600 million. Amazing. But look, just in case this Venom movie we're putting out in October comes in at like $240 million or something, and it ends up losing us a bunch of money, it's time to cut bait. And maybe even then time to reconsider what we're doing with our Spider-Man characters at all in the first place. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Long story short, I think the reason they pulled this off the release date is an act of being cautious. And a little bit of precaution isn't so bad in today's environment. Look, let's see what happens when Venom comes out. If Venom comes out, has a solid opening weekend, like 100 million or more opening weekend, you're going to hear about a new Silver and Black release date almost immediately. I guarantee you'll hear it almost immediately. If Venom opens up to like $38 million, we may never hear from Silver and Black again. And then there's a whole bunch of other questions that we're going to have to answer about where is Sony going to go with this. I personally think Venom is looking pretty good, so I'm going to keep optimistic about it and keep my fingers crossed for now. We'll see how that all turns out. And that'll do it for today's installment of the Movie News Feed. And now you are all caught up to date on everything going on in the world of movies. Now, hey guys, I should let you know here quickly. Tomorrow, that is Tuesday, the John Campea Show will be airing at 8 a.m. for a special airtime. The reason it's going to be on a half hour earlier tomorrow, now normally it airs at 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, just for tomorrow, it's going to be airing at 8 a.m. The reason being is I have a screening tomorrow morning of Jurassic World, so I need to get out of here a little bit early, so I'm moving the John Campea Show from 8:30 to 8 a.m. tomorrow. Again, that's just for tomorrow, just a half hour earlier than normal, but I just wanted to give you guys a heads up on that. Okay. With that out of the way, let's move on to the main topics today. And of course, as always, the main topics are topics that you guys decide upon. How do you send in a topic or question to be on the John Campea Show? It's simple. You just email me anytime at john@thejohncampeashow.com. Put the word topic in the subject line and keep your emails to 90 words less. Once again, email me at john@thejohncampeashow.com. Put the word topic in the subject line and keep your emails to 90 words or less. All right, with that out of the way, let's get to the first official topic today as submitted by you guys. And the first one comes to us from Cameron Moore, who writes, "We still have Indiana Jones 5 to come, but after the box office results for Solo, will this have any inclination on Lucasfilm recasting Indy? Audiences didn't seem ready to embrace a Solo-less Harrison Ford, and what I think what you probably meant to say is a Harrison Ford-less Solo. And would the results be the same for Indiana Jones? Thanks, and keep up the great work." Well, that's a fair question. That is a fair question, because a lot of people, including myself, have been saying since they announced the first Solo, since they announced Solo, was generally speaking, people don't want Han Solo without Harrison Ford. Could Indiana Jones, now we still have at least one more Indiana Jones movie coming with Harrison Ford, we know that. But what happens after that? Well, here's the thing. I think there are a couple of advantages that Indiana Jones has in this situation over Solo. Number one, it will be a number of years since they've seen Harrison Ford. Like whenever they decide to reboot Indiana Jones, it's probably not going to be in 2021. It's probably not even going to be in 2022. It's probably going to be a good 4 or 5 years after this next Indiana Jones film. That will give a little bit of a break, because what happened is we just got finished seeing Harrison Ford as Han Solo again. You know, Chewie, we're home. Like we just had that and everybody's all excited. Harrison Ford's back as Solo, and then immediately rip that out and now we got somebody else's Solo. That won't be the case with Indiana Jones. So they'll give a few years, I'm positive, they'll give a few years in between whenever this next Indy film comes out and whenever they decide to relaunch the franchise again. The other advantage that they have is they can just reboot the character. That's something you couldn't do with Solo, because Solo, you got to stay in continuity with the rest of the Star Wars universe. But if they go with a new Indiana Jones, they have the complete freedom to just reboot the character. And in doing that, the audience, our brains are now wired. We understand, oh yeah, if you're rebooting the character, it's new actors. There we go. So I think there are a couple of advantages they have, but make no mistake, there is still that fear. There is that worry. It's like, Are people going to be interested in coming out and seeing Indiana Jones if it's not Harrison Ford? Maybe. And here's the other thing that I think will go towards it. I think people will be more ready to see a new Indiana Jones if they put a really nice bow on this Indiana Jones. Like if Harrison Ford can really put, and I'm not saying kill him off, but I'm saying if they really seem to wrap up really well Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones films, it might position the audience. And, he's going to be getting close to 80, I think. I don't know. But I think that might put the audience in a good position to be ready to see a new Indiana Jones after that. Who knows? All I know is that it is going to be a struggle. It is a challenge. It is a real problem that they have to face, but I don't think it's as insurmountable of a problem as, say, Solo faced, because I think it's a little bit of a different situation. All right, let's move on to the next one. And the next email today comes to us from Patreon supporter Vrinder Singh Johal, who writes, with Episode 9 starting production very soon, I think it's fair to say that Lucasfilm have already decided to recast Princess Leia or not. I think they should let fans know their intentions regarding Leia sooner rather than later, because whatever they have decided will cause division amongst fans. Telling fans now will give us time to get used to their decision by the time the movie is released. Well, I mean, yes and no. It is true that regardless of which direction they decide to go with Leia, it's going to upset everybody. I mean, most people there's going to be at least half the people that get upset. If they don't recast the role and just say Princess Leia died off screen, going to upset a lot of people, including me. If you recast Leia, it's going to upset the other half of people. If you do a CGI Leia, it's going to upset everybody. I mean, so there is this, we've talked about this a little bit in recent days. This really is a no-win situation for Lucasfilm. There is no winning here. There is no winning. It's only about doing the best you can right now and then moving forward and hoping everybody else gets on board. Now, I mentioned before that the one thing that will solve this is if Carrie Fisher's daughter comes out and says, we think that we all owe it to the character of Leia that my mom spent her lifetime giving to us. We feel we owe it to this character to recast the role and let the character play out her story arc in Episode 9. If she says that, then I think everybody who's against recasting Leia will be, okay, we're on board. If Carrie's daughter says that, we're on board. If Carrie's daughter comes out and says, you know what, my mom gave her life to this character and we would feel more comfortable as a family and we feel Carrie would want us to not recast Leia, then people like me who want the character recast will go, okay, if Carrie's daughter says she doesn't want the character recast, then it doesn't matter what my reasons are, I go with that. I mean, and I think that will bring peace to the whole situation. I really do. I think whatever they decide, if Carrie's daughter comes out and says, I believe this is what's best, and I think this is what my mom would want too, I think everybody would get on board. Even if Carrie's daughter came out and said, I think my mom would like an all CGI Princess Leia, even though none of us want that, I think all of us would go, okay, if that's what Carrie's daughters want, and Carrie's daughter is saying that's what Carrie would want, I think we would get on board. Now, I see what you're saying about maybe they should just make the announcement now to give everybody time to get used to it. But really, now is not the right time. Not with everything that's going on with Solo. You don't want to add more logs to the fire right now. Because like you said, and like I said, no matter what it is that they announce they're going to do with Leia, there's going to be a big bunch of people that disagree with it and are going to be upset. It's a no-win situation. So I think what they have to do here, and maybe they will, maybe they won't. What I think they should do is let a little time pass between the box office problems of Solo, get a little bit of distance from that, and then come out. Because look, it's going to cause another storm no matter what they announce, right? It's going to cause another storm no matter what they announce. So you might as well get it at least separate a little bit from the other storm, and so they can just deal with that and then move ahead. So yeah, I don't necessarily think right now is the best time to announce. Or look, if they decide to recast, you don't announce that you're recasting it until you already have your actress picked. So then if you're going to announce that you're casting, you announce you're casting, and it's going to be this actress, right? So that's what you do. Yeah, so that's kind of what I think about that. All right, let's move on to the final email today. And the final email today comes to us from Court Jarrell, who writes, Hey, John, from Toronto. Hey, the T-Dot. I love Toronto. Been with Sinemia nearly 2 months. Mostly happy. Cineplex is no longer awarding points when buying with Sinemia. I don't get it. Theaters don't make much from ticket sales. If you're still making every cent of the ticket price, as theaters do with Sinemia, why not incentivize me to come back frequently and perhaps buy food? Well, yeah, that honestly, I do not understand it. It's not just Cineplex. AMC Theaters says they won't give you rewards points towards your AMC membership. It's called Stubs or Premier Stubs. I'm a part of it. AMC says they won't give you Premier points or loyalty points if you're using Movie Pass or Sinemia. Cineplex is obviously saying the same thing. There are other theater chains that say the same thing. Here's the thing. There's nothing they can do about it. If you go up to the concession, or if you go up to the ticket booth where there's a real live human being, and you say, yes, I'd like a ticket for this movie and I'm using my Sinemia card, well, then they can go, well, we've been told not to put points on, and then they won't put points on. But remember, these cards are actually MasterCards. They're actually MasterCards. The credit card company, they're MasterCards. You know, MasterCard, Visa, these are MasterCards. They just have a different label on them. They have Movie Pass on it and they have Sinemia on it, but they're MasterCards. So, when I go to AMC, I use the kiosk. I don't go to the ticket counter. I go to the kiosk. And I use the kiosk. And when I insert that card, whether it's my Movie Pass card or my Sinemia card, all the kiosk knows is that I'm using a MasterCard to pay for my ticket. That's all the kiosk knows. When you buy your tickets online, like you use Fandango. I use Fandango to buy my online movie tickets, right? And if I use either Movie Pass or Sinemia, all Fandango knows and cares about is that I'm using a MasterCard. And then I can apply my rewards thing from my individual company. So I put in my AMC Stubs number and I get Stubs reward points. I use the AMC kiosk. I use my card at the kiosk. I get my rewards points. I guarantee you, if you use your card and buy your tickets online or buy your tickets at one of the remote kiosks, you should get your rewards points on your loyalty program because it has no idea it's a Movie Pass or a Sinemia card. All it knows is that it's a MasterCard. That's all it knows. So yes, if you continue to go up to the ticket counter and try to use your card, they may deny you your rewards points. However, if you use an online service or if you use the kiosk, you should be good to go and you should be able to get your points no problem. Works for me, works for everybody else, because really there's no rational, valid excuse for these theaters not to accept payment or not to give you, if they're getting the money, if the movie theater's getting the money for the ticket, like if they weren't getting full price, I can understand this. But if that movie theater is getting full price for the ticket, and I'm the reason they're getting full price because I'm coming to your theater and giving you my patronage, and I'm a part of your reward program, you're damn right I should get those reward points. You're damn right. There is no valid excuse. There is simply no valid excuse for a movie theater not to give you those rewards cards if you're bringing them the business. And that's what the rewards programs are supposed to be, to incentivize you to bring them the business. Well, if I'm bringing you the business, you damn well better give me my rewards cards if that's what we've set up. So I have zero problem usurping their, whatever they say their rule is. I have no problem usurping their rule and using their kiosk to get my points because I'm bringing them the business. So anyway, that's just the way I see it. Some other people may see it a different way. Okay, with that out of the way, let's save some time here. We've got about 10 minutes to take some live questions from you guys. So let's go over to the live chat and see what you guys are saying right now. The first one comes to us from Mason Barr, who writes, "Hey John, how's the family? I assume all things are great." Things are good. For those of you who didn't know, my mom went in for emergency double bypass surgery. Scariest day of my life. But she's apparently, it went great. Couldn't have gone better. She actually called me herself yesterday, which was great. She called me on her phone from her hospital room, which is great. She's recovering wonderfully. So yes, all things are good. Thank you for asking, Mason. I really appreciate that. All right, Mason follows that up with, "The other day you mentioned Game of Thrones gets better after season 3. Was going to give up, but Peter Dinklage mainly hooked me in. I'm wrapping up season 5 tonight." Yeah, there are some people who really prefer the first couple of seasons of Game of Thrones. I personally think Game of Thrones gets better as it progresses. Now, I'm not saying this is for everybody. A few people who I have talked to have read the books And I have not. And I have no plans on reading their books. But a few people I've talked to have read the books. And it seems like the more and more Game of Thrones gets away from the books, the less and less they like the show. But I'm finding that's mostly with people who've read the books. And they're just kind of mad that you're not doing it the way the book did it. But I'm sure that's not true of everybody whatsoever. But yeah, for me, I'm really liking the show. And I liked Game of Thrones the first few seasons, but I've really gotten on board the last few. Let's see, Ben Renner writes, what if in the new Princess Bride, Peter Dinklage played Fezzik, and they made the giant role kind of ironic instead of being literal? Oh, I don't like that. For a couple of reasons, Ben. Number one, you're doing what I always say never do. Don't build your character around your actor. If you're thinking, because then what you're doing is, oh, let's change our story to fit this idea we have with an actor and shoehorn the actor in and then make everything revolve around the actor. I'm a huge Peter Dinklage fan. Everybody knows that. But no, Peter Dinklage should not be playing Fezzik. And I hate the idea of changing your story just to fit an actor you want to shoehorn in. You guys know that. I talk about that all the time. So I don't like that idea. If Fezzik isn't a giant, then that changes a number of other things that happen in the Princess Bride story as well. It creates a cascading effect. So I personally, look, I'm not saying it couldn't be done, not at all. Anything can be done and be done well. I just don't like the idea personally. I think if you do a new Princess Bride, you recast a new Fezzik who is a giant. Whether that's Big Show, or whether that's the Mountain from Game of Thrones, or whether that's some Shaquille O'Neal, or whether that's whoever, but I think you get a giant in there to do it. That's the way I would do it at any rate. Everett Bichara writes, thanks for your doing your show on my birthday today. Well, Everett, I bet you didn't know this, but I wasn't going to do a show today until I found out it was your birthday. Obviously, I'm kidding, but happy birthday, man. I hope you have a good one. All right. Michael Myers writes, genuinely sad that Solo is tanking. Favorite since episode 1. Hey, and that's the thing. Solo's a good movie. It's a good movie. I mean, all film is subjective, so I'm sure some people watch it and didn't like it, and that's fine. But it's a good movie. It's a good, fun, summer adventure movie. Were some people hoping for better? Sure. It's barely in my top 5 for my favorite films of the year. It's my 6th favorite. Seventh. 6th. It is my 6th favorite Star Wars movie. It's a good film. It deserves better than this. It does. But it doesn't matter what it deserves. All it matters is what's it actually doing. And it's struggling a lot. It is struggling a lot, to say the least. Let's see here. Oop, took the big jump. Let's get back up here. There we go. ZCM Zombie Custom Maps writes, holy crap, did you see Upgrade yet? It's amazing. No, as you guys know, I've had a bunch of things come up the last 48 hours, and I've still not seen Upgrade. I have still not seen Upgrade, and I can't even see it today. Because today, I got to go see Tag. And then I can't see it tomorrow, because tomorrow I'm going to be seeing Jurassic World. So hopefully, maybe Wednesday or Thursday, I'll finally get a chance to see Upgrade. It's frustrating because I've been really excited to see this movie. I've been really excited to see this movie, but I still have not had a chance to watch it yet, which really sucks. All right, Chris Warden writes, as bunch, I think you meant as much as I enjoyed Solo, there's no way Disney can spin this. These box office numbers are a huge disaster for Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy. Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. But remember this too. You cannot give blame on something without also giving credit. And you cannot give credit without also giving the blame. So you can't have it one way. You got to take it. It goes both ways. There are some people who are saying, and you guys know, I believe Kathleen Kennedy should step down from Lucasfilm. I have all the respect in the world for her. Spielberg thinks she's the best producer he's ever worked with. George Lucas handpicked her to run Lucasfilm. I have all the respect in the world for her. I really do. But, I made my video the other day about the pure, objective reasons why I believe she should step down, even though I think she's great. There are some people who are trying to say, pin all the blame of Solo's financial failure on Kathleen Kennedy. And I believe as the head of Lucasfilm, she does need to shoulder a lot of that. She does. However, What you are not allowed to do is, if something goes wrong on something, ascribe all the blame without giving credit to the things that go well, and vice versa. You can't give credit when things go well, but then give them none of the blame when things go badly. They are the head of the company, which means they bear the lion's share of the responsibility when things go bad and when things go great. So if we want to get into a conversation about Solo and its, let's just call it, failure. It's a good movie, but financially it's a failure. If you want to ascribe all the blame on that, on Kathleen Kennedy, that's fine. But then you have to keep your logic consistent and then give her all the credit for the fact that the previous 3 Star Wars movies under her reign made over $4.5 billion. Now, what people will then do is, oh, no, you can't do that because with those 3 movies, there's this and this and this and this. Wait a minute, time out. You're not taking other factors in consideration when ascribing the blame for Solo to her. You just want to say blame her, which is fair. She's the head of the company. But you don't get to not ascribe all the other circumstances to the bad stuff if you're going to do it with the good stuff. So it's got to go both ways. So we either say, okay, it's not really, she gets no credit for how incredibly financially successful those first 3 Star Wars films were. If you're going to say she doesn't really get the credit, then you have to say that she doesn't really get the blame for Solo then. If you're going to give her the credit for the first 3 things, then you also have to give her the responsibility for the failure of Solo. But you don't get to pick and choose. You got to be consistent with it. It goes both ways. Either she's responsible for the failure of Solo, thus responsible for the success of the first 3, or she's not responsible for the success of the first 3 and therefore not really responsible for the failure of Solo. I don't care which one you are, but you got to pick one. And it's got to go both ways either way. It's fine if you think she deserves all the credit and blame. It's fine if you believe she deserves none of the credit or blame, but it's got to go both ways. You got to be consistent with that. Don't play this game. Well, yeah, but with the first 3, there's this circumstance and this circumstance. Well, then you got to do the same thing with the Solo situation. You got to bring up all the other circumstances surrounding Solo as well. So I just think it's got to go both ways. Yes, the Solo failure is on her watch. And yes, I believe the responsibility mostly lies as the head of the company on her shoulders. But I also give her credit for the first 3 movies. So I just think people need to be consistent. They need to go both ways with it. All right. Moof Milker writes, how do you think the current divide with Star Wars fans will affect next April's Star Wars celebration in Chicago? Look, all I can tell you, I cannot tell you what other people are going to do. All I can tell you is what I'm doing. So I'm just one person, but, you know, I'm a person who is a Star Wars fan. I'm not going. I mean, so all I can give you is an example, is a one case study. That's this random Star Wars fan who lives in Burbank, California, also happens to do a little YouTube channel. His name's John Campea. Okay, so let's take the John Campea case study. The toxicity in the Star Wars fandom completely turned me off. And you know what? My brother-in-law, Stan, who's married to Anne's sister, he's also Canadian and a huge Star Wars fan. Unlike me, though, he's also 6'9" and a bodybuilder. But anyway, so Stan calls me and Anne and says, hey, Olive, that's Olive is Anne's sister. Olive and I are talking about going to Star Wars Celebration in Chicago. Let's all go. And I'm like, nope. I have my love of the Star Wars fan community is gone. It's just such a toxic, cancerous, awful place now. I've just lost my love. I haven't lost my love for Star Wars. I love Star Wars. But if you want to talk is there going to be any results? I don't know. All I can talk about is this one isolated case study, and that's me. And so I know 6 months ago, I was so excited about going to the next Star Wars celebration. So excited about it because I had such a great time at the last Star Wars celebration. With so many of you guys, I got to meet like thousands of you guys there. It was so much fun. I had a blast. And I have been looking so forward to another one. And then this rancorous, toxic, awful environment just made me lose my passion for it. So I cannot speak for everybody else. All I can do is speak for one person. And I can say, well, in this one case study, it has affected Star Wars Celebration because I have no desire to go. I'm sure there are people who don't feel the same way I do. I'm sure there are people who do feel the same way I do. So it's going to have an effect, unfortunately. It's really sad, but it is going to have an effect. Let's see. C. Murphy Life writes, why are you the only movie YouTuber that I know of that really takes advantage of Super Chat? It's a great way to make money and interact with fans. I'm not really sure, but the funny thing is, the Super Chat thing for me is great because I just had somebody else ask me that the other day. There are three big advantages for me using Super Chat. Number one, it's a great way to help support the channel, which is great. It keeps me going, keeps Ray having a job, it keeps fact checker Jonathan having a job. It's great. The second thing is it actually gives the viewers a mechanism that guarantees their question or comment will get on the show. That's the only way to guarantee it. And sometimes I don't have time to get around to all of them, but then they'll know their question will be used on another show, one of the companion videos, right? It gives a mechanism that guarantees your question will be on the show. The third advantage, and this is actually, you may not believe it, this is the biggest advantage to me, is that giving somebody the option that you know how to automatically guarantee getting your question on the show. I kid you not. This is 100% no exaggeration whatsoever. When I used to just try to take Twitter questions and take tweets, first of all, you see me, I'm like 10, 15 seconds of dead air time as I'm scrolling through tweets trying to find a good question to use, then use it, blah, 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 blah. Then another 10 seconds of dead air time as I'm trying to find a new Twitter question to use. But what would happen is I would get like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of messages. And inevitably, at least 3 times a week, minimum, sometimes every day in a week, but minimum 3 times a week, I would get angry emails from people saying, why do you never pick my question? I've never done anything to you. I've been a fan and a viewer since, 2014. Why do you never pick my questions? What do you have against me? And it's like, nothing. I get hundreds and hundreds of messages and I'm just trying to pick them as I can, right? At least, this is going all the way back to my AMC days when I would take some live questions or even just emails. People saying, why do you never pick my email? And people getting legitimately pissed off at me. Ever since I started using Super Chat, I swear to God, no lie, I have not, that I can remember at least, to be honest, I don't think I've gotten a single complaining email from anybody because everybody knows that there is a mechanism that guarantees their question, comment, or observation gets on the show. So it's really helped me out a lot in those ways. So yeah, it's been a great thing for me, honestly. It's been a great thing for me. It's been a great thing for my viewers. It's been just fantastic all around. I really haven't seen or recognized any drawbacks from it. Robert Perez sends in a super chat. Thank you, Robert. Sarat writes in, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. And then I can only take another 2 or 3 guys. And like I said, any live questions you guys have sent in that I don't have time to, don't you worry. I'm going to take those questions. I'm going to use them in the next companion video, okay? Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom releasing in Indy on June 7th. Is that why the review embargo is lifting so early compared to the worldwide release date? Yes, we've covered that on another show. But, it also it still expresses a lot of confidence that the studio has in this movie. The fact that they are letting it release internationally on an earlier date, thus needing the review embargoes to lift early before it hits here. To me, what it tells me, and this may not be true, but what it tells me is that they believe the audiences are going to love this movie so much, they want big positive word of mouth coming from overseas first to hype up and spin up the hype engine in North America, then it hits in North America and has a big opening. I think that's what it's telling us. Now, they may be right and they may be wrong, but I think they've got a lot of confidence. Again, I'm seeing this movie tomorrow morning, so fingers crossed. You know what? I watched about half of the first Jurassic World last night. You know what? It's better than I remember. I remember liking the film, but it's better than I remember. It is. I actually was really getting into watching it last night, so I don't know. My engines are revving for this thing. Robert Perez writes, love your show and all your content. Thank you. Well, thank you, Robert, for just taking time to send that in. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. All right, last question today. You've seen video essays about MCU suffering from bathos humor. I want to like MCU, but relentless frequent jokes prevented any movement or emotion to simmer. That's fine. If you feel that way, all film is subjective. It's going to hit you a certain way in a different way. But I can clearly tell you for the vast, vast majority of audiences, the balance of the humor with the heaviness and all that kind of stuff is a great mixture that has worked very, very well for the MCU. There is nothing you can do that is going to make everybody happy. I think every filmmaker needs to understand that. There's no formula you can adopt, nothing you can do that will make everyone happy. That does not exist. What you do is you find the right balance and the right recipe and the right, again, I'll just go back to the word balance, the right balance for you and your films. Marvel and the MCU has crushed it finding their balance to make their films incredibly entertaining, to keep the audiences coming back. The box office doesn't lie. The long-term box office does not lie. The audiences just keep coming back and back and more and more and more, eating up the MCU. So that's fine. Look, anybody can put out a video on YouTube saying, why I don't like puppies. Okay, you don't like puppies. Don't think for a second that your YouTube video on puppies makes some sort of definitive statement that people shouldn't like puppies. Fact of the matter is, most people love puppies. I mean, just because I put out a video saying, here are my reasons that Kathleen Kennedy should step down, that in no way, shape, or form means this is definitive proof, since John Campea made this video, that Kathleen Kennedy should step down. Not at all. It's just one guy expressing a thought. And that's what it is, to add to the overall community voices. If somebody doesn't like the humor in MCU, that's fine. Fact of the matter is, it works for most people. Most people love it, and it's working for them. And they just had 2 films in a row cross $1 billion. One's about to cross $2 billion. So you can make all the videos you want about how what the MCU is doing is bad, and that's fair. If it doesn't work for you, you should be able to get on YouTube or a podcast and express why it doesn't work for you and find some like-minded people who agree with you. Yeah, I'm sure there's other people out there that the humor in the MCU doesn't work. Absolutely. But it doesn't change the fact that the vast majority of people love the humor in the MCU. And it works for them. And it makes them love the movies even more. And the box office continues to be strong. So I have never seen these video essays but it's funny to me that as Black Panther makes $1.3 billion at the box office, and then Avengers Infinity War comes out and is about to become only the 4th film in history to join the $2 billion club, that there are any videos that talk about what the MCU is suffering from. Yes, please tell me what the MCU is suffering from, because they seem to be suffering horribly. I just find that, but again, that doesn't mean it should work for everybody. There are people who watch the MCU movies and don't like them. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But, I mean, to say the MCU is suffering from anything at this point is a little bit of a leap. A little bit of a leap to me. Okay, guys, I was going to do 2 more, but I've simply run out of time. Thank you so much for joining me. Once again, guys, don't worry. All the questions that I didn't get around to, they will be put into the next companion video. That will do it for me, guys. Hey, listen, do me a favor. If you guys enjoy my programming, do me a favor and head on over to www.patreon.com. Once you're there, or .com/John Campea. Once you're there, get all the information about what it means to be a Patreon supporter, how being a Patreon supporter keeps this show on the air, and what advantages there are to being a Patreon supporter, like audio-only versions of the John Campea Show and Open Mic. We've got an exclusive Facebook group. Star Wars Talk Tuesdays is now a Patreon-only show every Tuesday. By the way, for those of you who are Patreon supporters, Star Wars Talk Tuesday tomorrow on the Facebook group. And all stuff like that. And then maybe you'll decide to become a Patreon supporter too. If you do, awesome. And if not, that's perfectly fine. I'm just happy you're here being a film fan with us. All right, guys, that will do it for me for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thanks so much for joining me. My name's John Campea, and until the next video, bye-bye.